You're watching On the Line. I'm Doug Bernard. Guns have long been a part of American culture, and increasingly, so is the political debate about guns. The Obama administration says it's looking for reasonable restrictions to help keep Americans safer. Firearms advocates, however, say the president simply wants to take away their guns. Who's right, and who has the votes? Well, earlier, we spoke with Reuters White House correspondent Jeff Mason.
Well, I think that's a good question. I think that's something that the White House is definitely looking at right now, because the proposals will be coming out shortly, and the vice president and the president both really have shown a lot of emotion and a lot of energy on this issue because of the Newtown shootings. And so part of this will not only be what exactly they want to do, but how they're going to sell it and how they're going to get those votes. And so that's part of the work that they need to do to figure out.
I think there's emotion and energy on all sides of this debate in the United States. Help us understand why guns can be such a flashpoint issue.
It is absolutely a flashpoint issue, and it has to do with the U.S. history. The Constitution does enshrine the right to have weapons, to have guns, and so it goes back for more than 200 years, this right. However, there are opponents and proponents on both sides of that debate about how much those rights actually let you have. And when you have a mass shooting like what happened in Newtown late last year, it creates a lot of controversy and a lot of emotion. So it's controversial because there are people who believe everyone deserves to have these guns, and there are others who think, yes, there's a right to bear arms, but that does not mean we should have the right to have these big assault weapons, for example.
We'll turn to the proposals in just a moment, but just staying here for a quick moment. Other nations allow their citizens to have guns. They may have to register, but you can have any number of guns in any number of other nations. Why do you think in the United States it becomes such a very emotional and, as we're seeing now, a divisive issue?
It is just a part of the culture. It is a part of the legal culture, or it's a part of the communal culture of the United States. Going back to that history, going back to the Constitution, hunting is a very valued tradition here. Also, the ability to have some kind of a weapon if there were a civil war or a revolutionary war. I mean, that's the part that is enshrined in the Constitution. What the debate is whether or not that needs to be questioned now, and to what extent it should be questioned in the wake of these shootings, in the wake of the violence that is also a very typical, unfortunately, characteristic of this country and not of those other countries.
Of course, there was a terrible shooting in December. 20 children were killed in the Northeast. Was this event significantly different, do you think, from other mass shootings in the past?
I think so, and I think that's because there were 20 first graders who were killed. The President Obama has said that day was the worst day of his presidency, and that's saying a lot because he's had a lot of controversies and a lot of issues to deal with over the last 4 years. Yes, there are other very high-profile mass shootings, but when your victims are all 6 and 7 years old, it really hit an emotional chord.
Okay, what are some of the proposals that at this point are being discussed as possible remedies?
The president has said he supports an extension of an assault weapons ban. That is a ban that was in place that then expired. So I expect that he will talk about that coming out again. He has said he wants to do something to make stronger background checks for people who are purchasing guns. And then he also wants to do something to tighten controls on these weapon magazine cartridges. So that's something as well. I think we can expect to see those three components and probably a few other issues as well.
So now, of those three components, with how much of a free hand does the president have in changing these laws or the way they're administered, and how much does he need to work with Congress?
That's a good question. There will probably be a mix of things that he can do by executive action, which is something he can do without congressional approval, and there will be some legislation. The assault weapons ban would be legislative, and he may not be able to get that through, and he seems to have suggested that's something he really wants, but there's also a pragmatism from the president and from the White House about what they can and can't get done. On the administrative side, he has talked about these greater background checks, which I just mentioned, and also the way that data is collected on guns and how guns end up in criminals' hands, that may be something, that collection and tracking system may be something that could be improved and done without congressional authority.
How is this debate shaking out? And by that I mean, generally speaking, who is on one side of the issue, and generally who is on the other side of the issue?
It's interesting, the cast of characters. Right now, the White House and Democrats are perceived as being more in favor of tighter gun control measures, but there are both Democrats and Republicans in Congress who are not gung-ho about really tight gun laws. And of course, you can't not mention the NRA in this discussion. The National Rifle Association is a very, very powerful lobby, and they have influence over both Democrats and Republicans, and they have been very opposed.
Well, now, if someone from another country were to ask you, describe for me what the NRA is and how they have all this power, how would you explain that?
Well, they are a lobby group, and there are lobby groups for lots of different issues, from education to energy and to, in this case, guns. They have sway because, as we've sort of talked about already, that issue of guns is a very emotional one in this country, and it is an issue that some people make their decisions on when they vote. So that issue can affect elections, and the NRA will grade lawmakers based on their records on guns.
So given that Congress is going to have to be dealing with this is going to occupy a lot of Washington for some time, what's the concern that may suck all the oxygen out of the room for other equally important issues?
And there are lots of issues. The president wants to reform immigration. There's a huge debate over the fiscal problems that are facing the country, from the debt and debt ceiling to deficits. But gun control is the third big priority that the president has talked about. And when you've got Republicans in favor of some but not in favor of other issues, it may lead to a debate, or it may lead to a conflict as to how much can get done.
Finally, do you have any sense as to how this particular initiative may play out?
Well, I think that what will happen is the proposals will come out, and I think the president wants to show that he has an aggressive stance on this. I think that there may be a little bit of a sense of guilt that he didn't do more in the first 4 years of his administration, because there have been several massacres that happened under his tenure. So I think he'll want to show an aggressive package, and then we'll see a lot of debate, both in Congress and outside.
And whatever happens, is this then the end of the gun debate?
The gun debate absolutely won't have an end. This will be an opening shot in this particular set of policies, but based on U.S. history and based on the fact that, unfortunately, no matter what they do, we're going to see more shootings, I think the debate will continue.
Jeff Mason, thank you so much.